In hindsight, we should have seen it coming. In the long and storied history of the Intergalactic Council, there have been many forms of first contact. Due to this, nearly any exploratory, scouting, or diplomatic vessel is required to have very thorough documentation of proper protocols in the event of a first contact. Of course, Cradle defense fleets or Council enforcement vessels don't maintain those databases because no one ever imagined they would be involved in a first contact. In the year humanity referred to as Sol 2138, the Council detected the activation of a dimensional annihilator. Dimensional technology is heavily restricted and weaponizing it is strictly banned. Triangulation and dispatching an enforcement fleet to shut down whatever idiot was trying to kill himself in a backwater system took a matter of hours. The enforcement fleet walked into the system, immediately broadcasting the standard warnings and commands, only to be met with a barrage of completely nonsensical signals. Embarrassingly, it took nearly 4 local days for the fleet to understand what was going on. 4 days where a fleet of warships were parked over the primitive civilization's planet. With first contact already ruined, the Admiral of the fleet decided to simply do his best to salvage what he could from this scenario. After all the scans indicated this was a pre-FTL colony world. Rather incredibly overpopulated and polluted, but that happens to most primitive species. Some other spacefaring using their system for weapons tests and then the fleet showing up? They must be in complete chaos. It took 2 more local days to correct those faulty assumptions. This was not a colony world, this is their cradle. The dimensional weapon that was detected? It did wipe out a small city, but it was their own scientists. They created one of the most feared and powerful weapons in the known universe by accident, and didn't even know how they did it. Of course, a very deep and detailed scan was carried out, while the diplomatic teams made their way into the system. The packet that greeted those teams was equal parts hilarious and concerning. These primitives called themselves humans, and called their cradle world dirt. Their technology was, in a word, lopsided. They figured out how to harness nuclear fission, and then used it for steam power. They built a habitat over their cradle for conducting advanced graviton-based research, and traveled to it by sitting on a bomb. They have space travel, and yet are still using wooden ships with canvas sails. They have dozens of languages, and they can't even agree on how math works, yet they have an information network that connects the entire planet in real time. The teams managed to shut down the testing in dimensional tech, even though the humans didn't think that was what their machinery did, and prepared a vessel to bring a team of researchers and world leaders to meet council representatives at a pre-approved station. First contact protocols with a sufficiently advanced species include providing an incredibly simple ship with an interstellar drive and minimal staff to allow the new species a sense of control over their introduction to the galactic community. The humans were dabbling in dimensional tech, so obviously they were advanced enough. This was a mistake. Humanity being the first and only civilization to have their first contact be with an enforcement fleet designed to deal with those breaking intergalactic law really should have been a sign of how things would go. This vessel has a great many safeties built into the drive. It travels by using dimensional technology to create artificial mass in front of the ship, and then riding a bubble of warp space across great distances. Many species have tried to increase the artificial mass or create multiple points in front of them to go faster. This doesn't work. The technology involved simply doesn't work that way. Multiple points collapse back into one point. Increased energy in the reaction just makes the bubble bigger, not faster. To prevent the vessel from going off course, this first trip only has 2 permitted settings on the warp drive, towards the pre-approved station and towards the species' cradle world. This prevents a new species from getting lost in the great expanse and needing to be tracked down. This protocol has been followed for many cycles, and was considered to be foolproof. No one told us that humans invented a better idiot. Partway through the journey, stations in nearby systems began to pick up odd readings. Equipment was moved and monitoring stations turned on. No one tried to contact the human vessel. This was a mistake. The humans, in their infinite wisdom, decided they understood how these warp drives functioned, and proceeded to reactivate it mid-warp. However, no one was prepared for them to activate it in an attempt to create a point of artificial mass behind them. This has been researched before. Creating 2 points at once on either side of a vessel would normally cause shearing, destabilize the warp, and deactivate the drive. This has never been attempted while the drive was already running. Instead of 2 conflicting bubbles causing dimensional shearing and dropping them out of warp, space would begin to compress at a point behind them, and then they would continue moving. The humans knew the shearing would happen, so they set the point to appear outside of the warp bubble of space. So there was now a continuous series of points of artificially increased mass and developing dimensional shear building over a large area of space. A series of points in a line. Normally, the warp drive is safe enough to drive through anything. The warp space doesn't care about gravity wells and space is massive, so things like stars and black holes aren't accounted for in navigation. This was a mistake. A line of artificial mass and dimensional shearing intersected with a black hole. In all the known universe, this had never happened before. This line cut the black hole and exposed the innards to the rest of the universe. The singularity broke. The black hole unraveled. Energy surged outward in every direction, erasing everything in its local area in a flash of light. We never did find that human vessel, but we also never allowed a human access to a warp drive ever again. They can complain all they want, but the intergalactic community knows better now. Don't give them humans nice things. The fastest way to break something is telling them how something is supposed to work, and then leaving them alone with it. On the bright side, we have learned staggering amounts about the universe in recent cycles. But we really should have seen this coming.